Next Level Deer Supplements. I'm Nate Clark.
I'm Scott Christensen, and we want to welcome you to year 2 of the Velvet Gains series put on by our partners, Chasin the Dream. I hope you enjoy.
Let them grow.
Alright guys, we're in the last episode of the Next Level Deer Supplements Velvet Gains series for 2022. And this video, obviously going to show the August recap of the trail camera pictures, and then also show the 2022 hit list so far. And right now it's actually September 16th, and I've only hunted myself 3 sits, I believe. Just don't really have the right bucks that I'm looking for around at the moment. But August was a lot better month for the trail cameras, and we had a ton of bucks show up. Some pretty good ones, just one-time glimpses of bucks that I've been waiting for to show up, so I'm happy to see that they're still alive and still around. So I'm gonna get rolling into these trail camera pictures and do a little bit of backstory on some of these bucks. A lot of you guys, if you watched 2021 series of Velvet Gains, you'll recognize some of these, and I'll put some side-by-side pictures of the years of history we've had with some of these deer and just show you how much they've grown. And these bucks pounding the next level. I've seen drastic jumps in antler growth from each age class, just usually well above average, and it's all the bucks that are hitting these products hardest, so it's pretty obvious to see, but we'll get right into it. Pretty good young buck with good potential. This next buck is pretty frequent the last few years on the bullpen, the little alfalfa field, and the windmill bottom. I don't have a name for him yet, but he looks like he could be pretty good in another year. Including this buck, he wasn't around in August for some reason. I'm not sure where he went, but he made quite the jump from 2 to 3, and he's got the frame that he looks like he could be a really special deer in a couple years. The little alfalfa field was pretty slow, but this young buck has a lot of potential. The windmill bottom's been pretty hot the last couple years for young bucks, and all of these deer that I'm about to show have pretty good potential. Unfortunately, this buck got hit by a car a couple days ago. And this buck I've had since he was either a yearling or a 2-year-old. It could go either way. Every year I've had him, he's well above average for what he should be. I think this year he's 3 and pretty big at that. I still don't have a good name for him yet, but he's pretty awesome to watch. This buck is the last buck's running mate the last couple years, and they're pretty much always together. He made quite the jump as well. Tons of potential with this one. And here's some other pretty good young bucks. This little 10 point's pretty awesome. Cool little 8 point in the background. Bunch of the bucks together. Another good young one. This is actually the first summer that I've had a feeder or a mineral site down in here. This buck made a real good jump from year to year. And so did this buck that he's with pretty often. There he is, hard antler. And both the last two bucks, this is actually up at the top of the hills above the corridor plot. Good young buck with him. And this buck, I'm not sure who it is. I didn't have pictures of it all summer, but I did have a buck like this 3 times in the corridor last year, later in the year, that I'm pretty sure is him. The 80 got pretty hot here in August. And this is the number 2 hit lister this year so far, and actually come to find out, I had pictures of him in 2020 and 2021 down by the creek feeder, which is a couple miles away, and never put 2 and 2 together. Didn't really pay much attention to this buck because he wasn't big enough and I wasn't hunting down there a whole lot. And happy to see him this year. I believe he's 6.5 years old. This buck showed up just once, and I have no idea who he is, no history with it, but he looks pretty good. So if I ever see him in person, he might be one that gets put on the list. Decent young 8-point. And this buck, again, a new one, but I ended up having pictures of him a few days earlier down at the creek feeder with Tonka, so it's kind of cool to see the patterns and where these deer are going. The creek feeder was pretty hot in August. This is a buck that I call Coos because he looks pretty good by himself, but you put him next to other bucks and even fawns, and you can see that he's just a small stature deer, and I believe him to be 5.5. I've had him for sure the last few years. He'll get the pass this year. Kind of want to see what he does at 6.5 years old if he makes it to that. And a buck that I call Clinton. He's either 5.5 or 6.5 years old this year. It's pretty hard to tell, but I've had him the last 3 or 4 years down here. And Tonka, the number 1 hit lister for this year so far. I've had him for sure since 2020, and I believe he's 5.5 this year. Obviously, he's at the top of the list, but I don't think I'd be upset if he lived another year because he's got the potential that I think in one more year he could be past that 170 mark. Just an awesome, awesome whitetail. He's not around much until later in the year. This is actually the most I've had him in the summer, and just once in the first week of September. But in October, November, December, all the way through shedding, he's usually around quite a bit. Good young 10-pointer. And the young buck from the little alfalfa field. Really haven't had any cameras out southwest this year because of the cows and no food plot, but in August, a couple of the bucks that I recognized did turn back up, and this buck I named Turnip last year. He's 4.5 this year. Just awesome turned up beams and the picture of him with the turnip hanging out of his mouth. He made quite the jump. Looks identical, but his frame got way bigger. And this buck that I named 360 last year just because of this picture that I took of him hunting last year with the 360 blind in the background. He's with Turnip quite a bit. Another buck that has awesome potential in a year or two. As you can see, August was a little better, but the drought's still kicking us down. Hoping we get more rain and some other good bucks show up, because we've got some real high hit listers that haven't showed their faces yet. Thanks for watching.